The man they called Holly's Boone lived out past the shale-bladed ridge where no light ever reached without a reason. A widower near 40, with the thick hands of a man who once split cedar like butter and a face tanned hard as rawhide, he moved like someone who'd been struck one too many times and didn't flinch any more. His wife, Alma, had died 2 winters back giving birth to a son who hadn't lasted through the night. Since then, Boone's place, 3 rooms, 2 horses, and a patch of stubbled earth, had grown quiet as a grave with no name on it. No one went out to Boone's place unless they needed something fixed or sharpened or buried, and he never came in unless he had to. The town of Mercy Creek lay east of the ridge, and it was there he rode one cloudless night just shy of spring's first thaw, with nothing but a saddlebag of traps to trade, and that heaviness in the gut a man gets when life keeps taking more than it gives. Mercy Creek had changed since his last visit. The storefronts leaned older, hollowed by dust and ruin. The saloon still played its crooked piano, though the notes staggered like a drunk's last breath. At the livery, he sold a bundle of pelts to a pock-cheeked boy who didn't ask questions and paid too little. He meant to leave at first light, but fate doesn't wait on clean departures. He was loading his mule when he heard the first scream, not loud but close and sharp enough to cut through bone. Down by the farrier's shed, past the line of sagging laundries, he saw a girl running barefoot, her shift torn open at the hem, her hair like tangled wheat in the wind. She was maybe 9, maybe less. A second girl followed, smaller, slower, eyes black as soot. A woman trailed after them, painted lips, shawl hanging loose. Her voice wasn't pleading, it was scolding, as if they were dogs that slipped the chain. "Come back now, you goddamn little witches," she spat. "You want to starve, you want to end up like your fool of a mother." Boone stood still. The girls stopped short near his mule, panting. The older one looked up at him. She didn't cry. She didn't ask. She just stared, jaw clenched like someone who'd already made a decision. "What's your name?" Boone asked. The smaller one spoke, "Rosamund." "Yours." The older girl swallowed, "Junia." Their stepmother caught up then, panting from drink and spite. Her eyes flicked from Boone's rifle to the girls. "They ain't yours," she said. "No," Boone said, "but they sure as hell ain't yours either." "They're my husband's get. That makes 'em mine. Law says so." Boone looked at her. Her teeth were yellowed, 2 missing. She wore no ring. He smelled gin and lilac powder and something fouler beneath. "Then why you chasing them like stray pigs?" She snorted. They got no place to go. Their pa went west and their ma died pushin' Rosamund out. "I feed M, I house M. You want M, you can take M. 2 mouths I don't need. But don't bring 'em back after they start stealin' sugar and pissin' in the wash basin." Boone narrowed his eyes. "You're bartering them." "Barter," she laughed. "Call it charity. I was gonna leave M at the preacher, but he's got his own to feed. You look like you need something to keep the roof warm." He moved before she finished, not fast, just steady. He grabbed her by the wrist, thumb pressing bone to skin, and stared long enough she tried to pull free. She cursed and called him names he didn't flinch at. The girls watched in silence. "You got a name?" Boone asked. "Gilda," she hissed. "Well, Gilda, if I hear you took in another child and raised a hand to them, I'll come back with more than words." She yanked loose and spat at his boots. Boone turned, looked at the girls. "You ride quiet?" he asked. Junia nodded. Rosamund clung to her sister's shift. He loaded them both on his mule and walked beside it into the rising dark. The moon rode low, half hidden behind a gauze of cloud. They didn't speak until the town disappeared behind them. Rosamund asked if he had food. "Some," Boone said. Junia asked if he was going to sell them. "No." They walked until the sky began to pale. Birds hadn't yet started, and the world still held the hush that comes before it decides whether to wake or not. Boone's house came into view like something forgotten and half buried. The fence had holes. The porch sagged, but it stood. "You got a bed?" Junia asked. "One," Boone said. "We'll figure the rest." Inside, he lit the stove and boiled beans. The girls huddled in front of the heat, silent. He gave them his wife's old blankets, the ones she'd sewn before the bleeding started, the ones that smelled faintly of lavender and cedar. He sat across from them, watching. Not like a man studying prey, but like a man who'd once lost everything and hadn't yet figured whether what he found was worth the risk of more loss. Rosamond fell asleep with her head on Junia's lap. Junia didn't sleep. "She sold us for nothing," she said. Boone nodded. "You'll never go back." Junia's eyes didn't soften. They hardened, set like stone. "I won't forget," she said. Boone believed her. He also knew the world wasn't done trying to take them. And he wasn't done making it pay. Spring arrived with no ceremony. It came as a slow dripping from the eaves, as crows returning to perch above the broken fence line, as the last frost pulling its claws from the earth. Holly's Boone's land remained quiet, but no longer empty. The girls did not laugh, not even once. Rosamond asked questions, hundreds of them, about owls, knives, chimney smoke, and how long it took for a man to die when shot in the stomach. Junia said little, but her eyes followed every move Boone made, memorizing the sharp edge of his axe and the way he coiled rope like it might one day be used for more than hauling water. He taught them without fanfare, how to split kindling without losing fingers, how to identify the good berries from the ones that burned your gut raw. He showed them the hidden spring, the trail that deer used, the shed where he kept traps strung up like iron teeth waiting to be fed. At night, Junia checked the door bolt 3 times before sleeping. Boone saw the pattern and said nothing. Rosamond dreamed loudly. She'd twitch and mutter, hands clenched into fists, sometimes whispering for her mother. When she woke, she'd ask if it was wrong to hope Gilda died cold in a ditch. Boone never answered that one. By midsummer, the 3 of them moved like parts of the same ghost-haunted machine. Boone rode into Mercy Creek only once in those months to fetch salt and ammo, and when he returned, Junia met him halfway down the trail, hatchet in hand. "You were gone too long," she said. Ridge washed out, took the long pass. She didn't lower the hatchet, but she stepped aside. Boone noticed then that she'd been cutting wood without being asked. Rosamond had dragged stones around the house, building a ring for fire that hadn't existed before. They weren't just surviving, they were shaping something, even if it still hurt to look directly at it. That fall, a stranger came up the ridge. Boone was working the post near the corral when the wind changed and brought the scent of pipe smoke. He didn't turn. He just straightened slowly, reached for the rifle hanging off the porch beam, and waited. The man who appeared wasn't much older than Boone. He wore a badge, though tarnished and crooked, and rode a gelding too clean for a drifter. His eyes were sunken and dark, the way men look after walking too many nights without sleep or compass. "You Boone." "I am." "Name, Darden. I work out of Perdition Bluff. Got word from Mercy Creek about 2 missing girls." "They ain't missing," Boone said. "That's so. They were given away, or traded, depending on how much you want to damn the woman who did it." Darden slid off his horse, hands out, palms clean. "I ain't come to take 'em, just making a record. Girl's still alive." Boone nodded toward the barn. Darden glanced past him, saw a shadow shift, Junia, standing inside, watching. "You mind if I speak to M?" Boone didn't answer, just let the silence stretch like wire over a wound. Darden swallowed, fair enough. He took out a notebook, scribbled something, and handed Boone a page torn rough at the edge. "In case someone else comes looking," My name's on it. Says you've got guardianship under common mercy clause. That's all I can do without papers." Boone read it, folded it, and slid it into the pocket where he kept a photograph of Alma, creased, sun-bleached, but still whole. "What else you hear in Mercy Creek?" Darden scratched his jaw. "Gilda, gone, disappeared middle of summer. Some say she headed west. Some say she tried to bed a cattleman and got left out in the brush to rot. Either way, no one's looking too hard." Boone looked toward the barn. Junia hadn't moved. "She still haunts them," Boone said. "She haunt you?" Boone didn't answer that either. Darden nodded, mounted again. "If it means anything, there's worse hands they coulda landed in." Boone didn't watch him ride away. That night, Junia didn't sleep. She came out to the porch after Rosamund had gone under, barefoot and silent, arms wrapped in one of Alma's old shawls. "Was she dead?" she asked. "Who?" "Gilda." Boone blew smoke off the edge of his tin cup. "Don't know." "If she is," Junia said, "I want to see the bones. I want to know she don't have a face anymore." Boone looked at her. She didn't blink. "You don't have to carry that weight," he said. "I already am." He couldn't argue. Some burdens settled in too early and sank their teeth too deep. By winter they had a rhythm. Junia laid the traps. Rosamund cleaned what came out of them. Boone kept watch over it all, feeling something between dread and pride as the girls hardened. One night, the snow thick and air sharp enough to bleed, they heard a knock. Not on the door, on the window. Boone was up before the sound had fully settled. He moved with the rifle in hand, stepped out slow. Nothing but a trail in the snow, barefoot. He followed it half a mile down toward the creek. Found a boy no older than Rosamund, curled beneath a tree, lips blue. Boone carried him back. He weighed nothing, skin stretched tight over ribs, eyes flickering even in sleep. There was a brand burned into his shoulder, letters rough and ugly, J.E. Rosamund was the first to speak when Boone laid the boy near the stove. "Is he dying?" Boone nodded. "Not if I can help it." Junia stood behind her sister, arms crossed. "Where's he from?" "Don't know yet. He has a mark." "I saw." Boone cleaned the wound, fed him broth, waited. 3 days passed before the boy woke. When he did, he screamed, not loud but long, like someone being pulled out of the earth against their will. He didn't remember his name, only flashes, a wagon, a man with teeth like nails, chains. Boone felt something turn cold in his gut. The past had a way of sending its echoes. And whatever had been done to the boy was just the beginning. Junia watched him sleep that night, her jaw tight, the hatchet she kept now tucked under her cot. "We should find who did that," she whispered. Boone nodded slowly. "We will." She didn't ask how. She just looked toward the window where the snow kept falling, where the world outside hadn't stopped hungering. The boy called himself Eli because it was the only name that didn't make his mouth ache. He was slow to speak and quick to flinch, and when he moved, it was with the caution of a creature used to being struck. The branded letters on his shoulder festered through winter, then healed over with a pinkish welt that throbbed when he touched cold iron. Rosamund said he had ghost skin. Junia said it was a message. They learned quickly that he wasn't simple, only scared. He slept in a pit under a floorboard. He didn't know what a hymn was, but he could carve a snare from nothing and draw the map of a trade route from memory. Sometimes he'd wake speaking names like prayers. One night he whispered the same 3 words again and again until Junia slapped him hard enough to stop it. "Who's J.A.?" she asked him in the morning. He wouldn't say, but he didn't deny the name was his brand. Boone had theories. There, been rumors for years of ranchers buying runaways and orphans from the territories, folding them into the labor camps that supplied the big freight routes west. Kids who didn't matter traded like livestock, but Mercy Creek had never been a direct line for that filth, not until now. In February, Boone rode west. He told the children nothing except that he'd be gone 5 days. He left them enough food, ammo, a flare pistol, and a dozen sharpened stakes hidden behind the woodpile. Junia looked like she meant to argue, but didn't. He rode hard, crossing the old riverbed near Fort Lassiter, then into the hills where the map turned more legend than truth. He followed the clues Eli had offered in fragments: a red barn, a rope bridge, the stink of boiling tar. On the 4th night, he found it. A work camp carved into the side of a gulch, hidden behind a false line of trees. Lanterns moved through it like will-o'-the-wisps. Children's silhouettes worked under canvas tents. Boone watched from the ridgeline, teeth clenched. A man came out with a whip coiled at his belt and boots too fine for the mud he walked in. Boone waited until midnight, then crept down. He didn't kill anyone, not then. He wanted to know names, how wide it spread, who protected them. The man with the whip, named Corbin, screamed plenty once Boone pinned his hand to the wall with a nail punch and began removing fingers one by one. The brand, he admitted, stood for Jesse and Wright, a broker, wealthy, owned cattle, land, judges, and fear. Ran 5 camps across the range under different names, changing them when too many children disappeared at once. Boone left Corbin alive, bleeding and broken, with a message carved in his chest. Eyes on you. By the time Boone returned, his face had changed. The girls noticed, so did Eli. Rosamond clung to his side and whispered, "Did you hurt the bad man?" Boone didn't lie. "Yes." "Good." Junia watched from the corner. Her eyes didn't question, only waited. In the weeks that followed, Boone began training all 3 children as if war had already started. No more waiting. No more hoping the dark would pass by their door. He dug out the buried crate beneath the stable, his old kit from a life he never talked about. Inside, 2 revolvers, a satchel of explosives, a knife shaped like a crow's beak, and a faded U.S. Marshal badge. He gave Junia the knife. "She's not ready," Rosamond said. "She is," Boone replied. Junia tested the weight in her hand, then slipped it under her belt without a word. The next visitor came in spring. Not a man, a girl. Older than Junia by a year or 2, filthy and limping, her dress torn open at the thigh where a wound festered black around a splintered bone. She collapsed 10 feet from the door. They pulled her inside, cleaned the wound, tried to ask her name. She didn't speak, only stared past them, breathing hard, lips pale as the moon. Eli sat beside her that night, humming something broken and tuneless. After an hour, the girl reached for his hand and whispered, "Moriah." That was all she'd give, but it was enough. The brand was on her too, though older, faded to a shadow. The others were out there, still marked, still running, or dying in silence. Boone knew then that this wasn't survival anymore. This was a campaign. He gave Junia the map, taught her how to read it, gave Eli the flare pistol, gave Rosamond his wife's old derringer, barely enough to kill a deer but more than enough to stop a man if the shot was placed well. They built traps beyond the creek, dug false trails, practiced signals. A whistle meant scatter. A stone at the threshold meant someone had passed through. And all the while, Junia kept carving names into a strip of bark she wore around her wrist. Corbin, J.E. Moriah, Eli, Gilda. She carved her mother's name last. "You think she'd want you doing this?" Boone asked one night. "I think she wouldn't want me dead," Junia said. Boone couldn't argue with that. Summer brought vultures. Not birds, but men. 3 came on horseback with the smell of authority and 2 clean boots. They asked questions Boone didn't answer. "We heard about the boy," one said. "You harboring fugitives, mister." "Not unless you count the ones who ran from hell," Boone replied. "You threatenin' us." "No," Boone said, "but if you don't leave by sundown, I will." They saw the rifle. They saw the knife on Junia's belt. They saw Eli staring at them like someone who already knew how much blood it took to drown a man. They left. But Boone knew they'd be back, next time with more. That night, he told them the truth. About the badge, about what he'd done during the last martial purge in '68, about the things he couldn't forget and the people who wouldn't forget him. He told them Jesse and Wright had once owned a judge and a mayor and might soon own a governor. He told them there'd be no peace unless it was carved out with iron. Junia didn't flinch. "We go to him," she said. Boone looked at her and saw what she'd become. Not a child. Not yet a woman. But something sharper than either. He nodded. Rosamund reached for his hand. "Can we come back?" "If we make it," Boone said, "we come back." He said nothing about what would happen if they didn't. He didn't have to. Because the wind had changed again. And this time it carried blood. They rode before dawn, wrapped in old coats and wool torn from winter clothes, their breath vanishing into the gray hush of the lowlands. Boone's mare carried the weight of Moriah, too weak to stand, bundled in quilts lashed to the saddle. Eli rode double with Rosamund, small enough to tuck behind her like a shadow. Junia rode alone, the knife hidden behind her spine, the same way Boone had once worn his. They didn't take the trade road. That route was watched, and Boone didn't want watchers. He took them through the old paths, the ones wagon wheels had forgotten, where root and thorn claimed everything not quick on its feet. On the third day, they reached the edge of dry fork territory, where Jesse and Wright's land began. They passed through towns that spoke his name like scripture. Every postmaster, every saloon hand, every man with a badge said Mr. and Wright, like it might keep them from being flayed in their sleep. And every child they saw looked too thin, too quiet, too trained. Junia marked each one in her memory. They stopped outside a settlement called Dead Elm. Boone left the others in a glade and rode in under dusk with the coat collar high and his voice low. The saloon keeper knew him. "Boone thought you was buried with your badge." "Only the badge," Boone said. "Why you here?" Boone didn't answer right away. He set a coin on the counter. "You seen him." The barkeep looked down at the coin like it was poisoned. "He don't come here himself, sends men, always men. You touch him, you'll make thunder." Boone's eyes were steady. "I want lightning." He found the first trail that night. A man named Lorne who'd run one of the branding camps near Bitterjaw Ridge. He was drunk and loud and bragging to a girl half his age that he used to break colts and children both. Boone dragged him into the alley and broke his teeth on the corner of a trough. Junia watched from the edge of the stable, silent. When Lorne finally begged, Boone asked for a name. Randell Veek, Enright's foreman, the one who carved the brands himself. "Where?" "Stockyard west of Grievance Gulch. You can't miss it." Boone crushed his windpipe with a boot and walked away. They made camp on the bluff above Grievance. Smoke from the stockyard stained the sky, thick and greasy. Moriah coughed blood through the night. Eli sat beside her, refusing to sleep. Boone pulled Junior aside before the raid. "Things'll move fast." "I'm not afraid." "Being afraid's smart. I want you scared, just not stupid." She looked him dead in the eye. "I don't need you to protect me." "I know," he said. "I need you to protect them." That morning, they moved. Rosamund and Eli stayed with Moriah in the cave, armed, alert. Junior and Boone circled through the blackthorn woods, approaching from the north. The stockyard was worse than Boone remembered. Half a dozen pens, children packed like cattle, guarded by men with whips and rifles. Smokehouse for branding, bunkhouse for the crew. And in the center, a two-story white house with trimmed shutters and glass windows like eyes that had never wept. Boone handed Junior the flare pistol. "You get to the roof. When I signal, light the sky. The others will come. If I don't come back, finish it anyway." She didn't ask what finish it meant. She knew. Boone went through the smokehouse first, 2 men inside. He shot the first through the chest. The second ran, bleeding from the throat, straight into the waiting knife Junior held as she crouched behind the door. She didn't look away, not even once. Boone kicked the back door open and stepped into the sun. Chaos cracked wide. Gunfire, screaming, children scattering from pens. A rifleman on the second floor took a shot that grazed Boone's cheek. He fired back and didn't miss. Then the flare lit the sky, green fire arching high, split like a comet. Rosamund came in first, Eli behind her with the hatchet. Moriah wasn't far behind, one arm tied in a sling, dragging a sack of nails. They moved like smoke through the stockyard, doors kicked open, locks smashed, fire set in barrels and stables. Enright's men panicked, some running, some shooting at shadows. Boone found Randall Veek in the White House. He was dressed in linen, sleeves rolled, a glass of brandy untouched on the table. "I know who you are," Veek said. Boone closed the door behind him. "Then you know what's coming. I'm not the one who started it. You can kill me, but Enright, he'll just buy another camp, buy another sheriff." Boone shot him in the kneecap. Veek screamed, toppled. Blood sprayed the rug. "I'm not here for mercy," Boone said. He found the branding iron hanging on the wall, still warm. Junior entered as he was heating it in the fireplace. "You don't have to do it," she said. "Yes, I do." She didn't try to stop him. Boone burned the letters into Veek's own chest. J.I. Then he left him there, screaming, crawling toward the bottle he'd never reach. They burned the house next. The smoke could be seen for miles. The children were freed, 38 of them. Some would die from infection. Some would live long enough to grow their own knives. That night Boone sat by the creek, washing his hands in the cold, dark water. Junior sat beside him. "You think Enright will come now?" she asked. Boone didn't answer. She looked down at her wrist. The bark strip now had 3 new names. Moriah stood nearby, watching over the others. Rosamund told stories to a boy who hadn't spoken since the stockyard. Eli dug a grave for the ones too weak to run. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were witnesses. And witnesses don't forget. The wind shifted again before the thaw. Cold came down from the high passes in sudden fits, scattering birds mid-flight and turning breath to mist so thick it clung to lashes. They stayed 3 days in the ruins of the stockyard, tending wounds and burying what needed to be buried. Some children stayed, some fled, none looked back. Boone kept watch from the ridge, his rifle across his lap, the scars on his knuckles stinging with the memory of what had been done. He hadn't spoken Veek's name since the house burned. Neither had Junior. They didn't need to. Enright had not come, but word had traveled. Too many men with badges were suddenly asking the same quiet questions. Too many riders passed on roads they once avoided. The sky was full of waiting. On the 4th day, a rider approached. Boone saw him an hour before he arrived. A courier, judging by the lean frame, the tight roll of letters at his side. but he didn't carry paper when he dismounted, only a satchel, stained and half frozen. Boone met him alone, behind the ash-thick ruins of the White House. "This from Jesse?" Boone asked. The courier nodded. Boone took the satchel, opened it. Inside, a child's boot, blood dried to the sole. A scrap of fabric with Rosamund's name stitched clumsily in red thread. Boone said nothing, just folded the cloth and returned it to the bag. "He said that's warning," the courier said. "Not a message. Said he'll take everything from you if you step 1 foot further." Boone looked past him, to the woods beyond the ridge. "I already lost everything." Then he shot the courier through the neck and left the body for the wolves. They rode out the next day. No argument, no delay. Junia loaded her knife. Rosamund packed 4 jars of kerosene and the derringer she'd stopped using on rabbits. Eli brought Moriah's sling and 2 lengths of cord sharpened to wire. They didn't ask what came next. They knew. Boone had 1 stop to make. An old friend buried deep in the canyons. An explosives man named Hatch who'd once blown an entire trestle line for spite and whiskey. Hatch opened the door with a shotgun and a squint. When he saw Boone, he smiled with half his teeth. "Thought you were dead." "I was." Boone handed him the scrap of fabric. Hatch stared at it, then tossed it in the fire. "How big?" "Big enough that no one rebuilds it." They packed the wagon that night with black powder, fuses, canisters of lamp oil, and a satchel of short-fused sticks meant to bring down stone. Enright's estate sat 30 miles north, just past the barren line, hidden beneath walls of pine and men too eager to die for coin. A false town surrounded it, buildings that looked lived in, saloons and post offices filled with actors and guards, staged to make anyone watching believe it was nothing but another dusty milepost. But Boone knew better. The train tracks ran through it, and below those tracks, vaults, tunnels, cells, and secrets. They reached the edge by nightfall. Junia went in first. Dressed like a servant girl, ash rubbed on her cheeks, eyes lowered. She got through the outer gate without a second look. She returned an hour later with a hand-drawn map and a bloodied handkerchief stuffed in her pocket. "This was Gilda," she said. Boone looked at the stain, still fresh. "They waited for midnight." Hatch rigged the tracks with a killine of black powder leading from the storage barn to the tunnel mouth. Rosamund poured kerosene in the grain silos. Eli climbed the bell tower and waited with the hatchet, silent as ever. Moriah, her arm still healing, lit the first fuse. The fire took fast. The guards were slow, sleep-drunk, drunk in truth. The first explosion came from beneath, shattering the track line and sending shrapnel through the false saloon front. Screams followed. Then the second blast, collapsing the bunkhouse roof in a sheet of fire. Boone moved straight through the gate, shotgun in hand. No mercy, no pause. He found Gilda chained inside a root cellar. She was barefoot, one eye sealed shut from a bruise. She looked up, recognized him, and laughed once, dry and bitter. "Didn't think it'd be you." Boone knelt, pulled the chain taut, and snapped it with a cold chisel. She didn't ask for help walking. She didn't thank him. He left her behind, let her find her own way out. Enright was in the upper house. He didn't run. He stood at the top of the stairs, wearing a tailored coat and a gold pocket watch. He didn't hold a gun. "I was wondering when," he said. Boone stepped in, alone. "You branded children." "I bought labor. No one else was willing to raise them. I fed them, trained them. They were going to die on the road." "You made them beg." "They were alive." Boone shot him in the gut. and Wright dropped to his knees, blood soaking silk. "You think this ends it," he gasped. "There's more like me." Boone crouched beside him. "I know," he said. Then he shot him in the face. They left nothing behind. The children fled into the woods, some led by Junia, some by Moriah, a few clutching nothing but each other's hands. Rosamond scattered the last of the powder into the fire, watching it bloom in orange arcs that lit the night like lightning. Boone stood alone at the edge of the fire line, the house behind him crumbling into black flame. Junia came to his side. "Are we done?" she asked. Boone looked at her, at the knife on her belt, at the streak of blood across her cheek that wasn't hers. "You never finish," he said, "but you rest." They returned to the canyon in the days that followed. The house still stood. Boone fixed the roof. Moriah planted wild roots in the thawed soil. Rosamond took in every stray that wandered near, animals and children alike. Eli carved names into a single wooden beam under the porch. No markers, no gravestones, just names. Junia sat on the ridge each evening, watching the trail. She still wore the bark strip, it still grew. Boone took the badge from the crate and buried it deep in the field behind the barn. No more law. Only the fire they'd lit together. And in that fire, they weren't the forgotten. They were the reckoning.